everybody. I'm Rabbi Aklepi, and welcome to my sukkah, and welcome to Beth Temple Beth Am's Erev Tov. It's a good evening, and we are again heading into the holiday on Friday of Simchat Torah and Shemini Atzeret, and we are still in our sukkah. We can see the sukkah a little bit. My lights are turning on, hard to see them, but the lights are turning on. And our pomegranates and grapes are hanging, and I have a fabulous drink in honor of our guest this evening, in honor of Lindsay Spiegelman, who does so much work with teens here and in Israel. I have a special, really ta'im, really tasty Israeli cocktail. And I think I've outdone myself in my preparations this evening, because I have tried things today which I have never tried in my kitchen. So let me tell you, this is a pear drink, a pear rosemary drink. And I've used things in the kitchen, as I always tell you, during the pandemic, things that were just hanging around. I have a rosemary plant growing outside, and it's really on its last legs, but it suited me well, because today I made rosemary simple syrup. Is that the simple syrup? Yes, that's the rosemary simple syrup. Until this morning, I never knew a thing like that existed. We have, of course, the pandemic's favorite liqueur, elderflower and vodka, and crushed pear. Now, this crushed pear is not a Sabra prickly pear. It's a regular pear. That's what the recipe called for. Luckily, I had very soft pears, almost ready to be gotten rid of, but no, they're going into our cocktail of this Israeli pear cocktail. So here goes. I'm putting in crushed pear into the shaker filled with ice. I'm putting supposed to be half a pear, but as you see, I have two drinks. This drink looks so good. Hopefully we'll get two cocktails out of it. I have that in here, and of course, for the mocktail, except that will not be strained. So let's see how that comes out. Fresh crushed pear, vodka, the elderflower liqueur, and the rosemary simple syrup, which was made from fresh sprigs of rosemary, sugar, and water. So I'm going to put most of it in here, but I will save some of it for that as well. This gets a good shake. You know, it's still quite warm in our coat here in Miami. I have the fan going, and even though the sun is pretty high, really will be setting in another 2 hours, hour and a half, it is still warm. But this drink is going to be, I would say, pretty awesome. And it is, whoa, it foamed up, I guess, because of the fruit. Let's try. I have, for me, for Alex, he can come get his. I'm not going to give him too much, as you see. Not that, okay, it's a hog. I'll be a little more generous. And you top it off with champagne or soda water. And I have my favorite Pellegrino. I wasn't going to open a bottle of champagne just in case. It wasn't as great as I thought, but I think it's going to be awesome. So a little top off there, a little top off to that one. And I will stir it. And of course, I will say l'chaim. And I have to say, I was right. One of the best drinks so far this pandemic season of Erev Tov. You taste the elderflower, taste the simple syrup and a flavorful but light scent and flavor of the rosemary of the simple syrup. And because of all the other things, the vodka does not come out too strong. And the pear makes it also quite rich. So that is awesome. I will take the spoon that did not touch the alcohol for the mocktail. I will mix up a bit of the crushed pear in with the simple syrup. Now this drink will be a little bit meatier since there was no strainer, even though the strainer in the shaker for the other drink was pretty wide open. And let's try with the sparkling water. Now, if you watch closely, I did something which I wouldn't recommend. I have both of the same spoons next to each other, which I wouldn't do if I was very, very careful and I had another guest here with the mocktail. Since it's just me, it's not so bad. I'll mix that up. You see that because there wasn't a really good straining of the drink, there is a separation of the pear and the sparkling water floating on top. But now let's taste the mocktail. And the mocktail is very, very good. Because it lacks the vodka and the elderflower, the rosemary syrup flavor comes out a little bit stronger, a little bit more fragrant along with the pear. So I also highly recommend this. You don't have to throw out any pears that lasted a little bit too long in your refrigerator. You can try some to muddle the pear, smash the pear, some soda water, and you can try some rosemary syrup. This recipe actually called for a rosemary sage syrup, but I only had the rosemary, so that's what we made. Delicious. You know, that is a great drink. If one were to spend time, let's say maybe in the Israeli desert, let's say in a place like Yerucham, and our guest, Lindsay Spiegelman, does spend some time in that development town in southern Israel, and I'm going to invite Lindsay in, and we'll get to meet her and hear what she's up to. One of our Millennium guests. I love having millennials on the show. Lindsay, hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here on Erev Tov. You know that people since Rosh Hashanah have been asking me, Rabbi, how did Temple Beth do such an awesome, incredible job with the High Holy Days, being remote and creating such wonderful services? And I'll share with everybody. One of the, besides, of course, the clergy that did an awesome job, the reason why we are able to look so good and put it together, one of the forces behind it, our director, Lindsay Spiegelman, was the force behind our High Holy Days, one of the forces, along with, of course, Neil Littauer and our video production group and Bob Berkowitz. So Lindsay, thank you. And everybody can see Lindsay's skill and creativity had helped us get to bring you the services and really a High Holy Day experience that even though we were separated, we could have resonate with us and bring in the new year in a very much worshipful and meaningful way. So thank you, Lindsay. So I talked about Yerucham, but let's talk a little bit first about those High Holy Days. How does a young woman get to produce High Holy Days at the synagogue where she grew up in? And, you know, where's that background from that you can say, okay, Rabbi, cut, Rabbi, do that again?
You know, this High Holiday experience, I think for everybody, was something that was totally new and uncharted territory. And it was a very big privilege to be able to take on the feet and kind of walk back into the room where previously my largest role was being in the High Holiday Youth Choir, and Jackie Burney is a saint and let me sing in front of other people, and I should have never been doing that. It was a really interesting experience with being able to collaborate with the clergy and with Bob Berkowitz and his team of pros. There was a little bit of feature in one of the services, but the setup that we had in the room for the high holidays was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And it was a very interesting experience to take my personal experience, which is in predominantly live entertainment. I graduated in 2016 from the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU with a bachelor's degree in drama technically, but designed for live events. And taking that experience, both designing and managing productions, which I really haven't done so much managing since I graduated from high school, and being able to draw on all of those different kinds of experiences to kind of just be a steering force for a lot of really brilliant and quick engines was a really big challenge and a really big privilege.
Right, thank you. And it was great for us to work with you. I know that sometimes being with a quick and very smart engine, sometimes they don't like, they like to be the engine and don't always like to take direction from other engines. But clearly we all collaborated beautifully and had a wonderful experience and beautiful services to show for it and share with everybody. So thank you. You know, for those watching now, the services were, you probably figured out by now, were taped ahead of time because we were worried about internet, we were worried about hurricanes, we were worried about overuse of Zoom and other platforms. And so we had to really get in the space of, in some days, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah on one day. And it wasn't always emotionally, spiritually easy to do, but we had a great team, and we did it so we could be prepared, fully prepared and ready to present something beautiful and meaningful, and we did. So thank you, Lindsay. And it resonated with people. We got our messages across. Hopefully we won't have to pray for the high holy days like that again, but nobody was late and nobody had to walk through the rain and nobody had to worry about parking. And so that was awesome. Those things were great. So thank you. But that's what you were doing. That's part of your life. And what also really excites me as a rabbi and the lover of Israel, the work that you do with teens in this country and from other countries and in Israel, getting them to really love Israel and experience Israel, not just like on a teen tour where they go from place to place and on the bus and off the bus, but they have a long time learning experience, and then they get to actually live in homes of people that they've already been learning with and growing with. And so tell us about your role in Diller Teens, what that is, and how you help change young people's lives.
Oh, I hope I'm changing young people's lives. The Diller Teen Fellows in Miami is run through SAGE, through the Center for Advancement of Jewish Education, in partnership with the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. That was like a lot of mouthful. We have big words in the Jewish world. It runs in 32 communities around the world, including San Francisco, where the program was started by Helen Diller and is now continued on by her family and the Helen Diller Family Foundation in San Francisco. The program, with a major focus on Israel, is so much more than that, and is a big part of why I love it. We take teens from our community. We have cohorts of 20 teens all around the world, and spend a year talking about Jewish identity and personal identity, and how those things sometimes fit together and sometimes don't, and how to kind of mitigate that and live through that. We talk about leadership and different types of leadership, and how you can be a leader and a follower, and nothing's passive, and there's opportunities for action in everything. And we talk a lot about Tikkun Olam and how we can identify needs in our community, whether it's our Miami community, or it's the United States, or it's Jews across the world, or it's Israel, wherever we find ourselves, not Jewish people in our community or any of the others that I've named, and how we can take our values that we discovered in exploring our Jewish identity, how we can take our leadership skills and really pay it forward to the communities that we are a part of and that we interact with. And being able to do that with 20, 10th, and 11th graders every year. I tell the teens this, and they're all like, oh, you have to say this. It's so corny. I feel so privileged to be able to learn from them every day. And the way that they see the world is, I'm not that much older than them, but the way that they see the world is different than how I see the world. And each one of them brings such new energy and perspective that we're really able to make a really, really big difference. And the Diller Teen Fellows mission is to create the next generation of Jewish leaders. And sometimes it feels like a very big weight, but mostly it feels like a very big honor to be a part of that experience, to be a part of that future in whatever way I can. And right now that's happening with Diller on the ground in Miami, in different places all over the world. We're on all 6 continents. There's program being run. And then, our time that we get to spend working with and working in Israel as well.
One of the things I loved about Diller and sending teens to Diller is that the kids who weren't always like the very identified Jewish leaders. Like, they were the teens I knew who really, they may have been somewhat leaders, or not even emerged leaders yet, but they had this potential to be leaders. They weren't the ones who stood up and said, I am this really self-identified Jew. They were Jewish. I knew them. They had a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, maybe confirmation, maybe not, generally not. And they were willing to commit themselves to this time of learning, and not only learning, but then bring a team, talk about bringing the Israeli teens into their home, who really are 180 degrees different from them in culture and language and the way they look at the world, from coming from this very small development town and with very different values, and coming into Miami. And then they had to go experience and live there too. So tell us some of those great stories about the teens coming into Miami and how that works. Our teens going to the town of Yerucham, and give us a couple ideas of what were the most outrageous, in the positive way, outrageous things that you saw over the 3 years that you've been there.
Sure. And I want to just note quickly that we do have 5 spots open in the program that's starting this fall. And parents ask me all the time, what do we need to do to get our kids in? Who's your ideal candidate? And Rabbi Aklepi, you said it exactly right. We don't have an ideal candidate. We say we look for teens that are going to put together a really well-rounded group. So whether you have a really solid Jewish identity and you're like the president of your class and you have 6 different clubs and you're on the BAFTI board and you do this thing and you're like there and in it, or you're a teen that really wants to be able to step up and doesn't quite feel like they have the confidence or the tools, all of those different things bring a lot of flavor and really elevate the group. So there's not an ideal teen. We love and have amazing teens that are Orthodox, modern Orthodox, Reform, culturally Jewish, conservative, just Jewish, Jewish, like the spectrum. And something that I feel really strongly about is that I don't love the labels either. So why feel like you're not enough of something to participate? And that's something that we work really hard to not only say but to make felt. Because there's a joke that if there was a perfect synagogue for every Jew, there would be 3 synagogues for each person. And I think that that's really important for teens as they're coming into like slowly starting to become like baby adults, that it's like they're starting to become independent and understand who they are separate from their parents and their experience and their family, that there's not a right candidate, there's not a perfect or an ideal candidate, that every person brings something different to the table, and we're like really trying to build a diverse, pluralistic, well-rounded community.
You use the word, an important word, but not everybody understands it. So when you say pluralistic, what do you mean?
Sure. So pluralism is one of the things that Diller has felt really strongly about, and I think is crucial to the future of Jews in the world. And pluralism is the practice and the belief that having differences between people is a good thing. When I talk to teens about it, like that's a lot of words that are really confusing. And we talk about it like diversity on steroids. You're not just acknowledging that people have differences, but we're saying the fact that you and I think differently, that we have different experiences, that we practice differently, that we are different, actually elevates the opportunities that we have and can take, and the impact that we can make on the world. You and I having different thoughts makes our conversation more intelligent. It broadens my worldview, it broadens your worldview, and that's exactly what we're looking to do. When we talk about Jewish things, when we talk about hobbies and interests, when we talk about tikkun olam, all of those things, we really want to provide the most open and holistic experience, and that Jewishly, politically, lifestyle-wise, educationally comes from having a very diverse population that's kind of embraced by that idea of pluralism, that our differences make the experience better.
Thank you. That was like one of the best definitions of pluralism and pluralistic Judaism that I've heard. So
you can call my supervisor and let her know.
That is great. She better be watching. So tell us about the teens and their experience when the Israeli teens come here and our teens go there, and what's that town like? Those who haven't been, I'll just give a little tiny background of. You'll do it probably a little more in depth. So some of us of a certain age may remember Yerucham as this development town that began in the 50s, where immigrants came from India and Turkey and other Near Eastern countries, and then later on from the Soviet Union and former Soviet Union. And if you're familiar with this Israeli movie called Turn Left at the End of the World, it gives you a good description of this town in the Negev, right? Which was practically nothing. When you would go from the north of Israel to a lot on the bus, there was a junction that had a gas station, a convenience store, and a restroom. And that was Yerucham. And the bus would stop there. You would get off and you'd buy the chocolate milk, and you would get back on the bus and head down to a lot, which was your destination. You would drive through Yerucham. And now Yerucham is a sister city of our federation. Yerucham is a whole other place. So take it away, Lindsay. Tell us about the teens and Yerucham.
Sure. We have a very big privilege in being partnered with Yerucham. And I know I'm going to see my phone light up if I get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Yerucham has been our partnership city for 14 years. This year, we just had our bar mitzvah year, I believe. And when I entered into this role, the Miami kids are like, why aren't we partnered with Tel Aviv? Our cities are way more similar. And I found a lot of value in being able to talk about the strength of our partnership with Yerucham is not about the size or the comparability of our city, because Israel fits into Florida 3 times. And it's not it's a different yardstick. And what is really special about Yerucham in terms of Miami is that our melting pot diversity that we have in our city here is mirrored there. There are teens participating in Diller and also living in Yerucham that are from Russian families, Ethiopian families, Indian families, Moroccan families, Ashkenaz families, anything you can imagine. That our melting pot is rivaled by Yerucham, which is crazy because it's a town whose population can fit inside of the American Airlines arena twice. When we talk about that with teens, especially coming from Pinecrest, from the reform world, when you talk about, that the town has a very big Orthodox community, that the Judaism looks and feels different, we already start to explain to the teens that how we are Reform Jews is maybe only starting to happen in Israel now, and it doesn't look and feel the same thing, and everybody tries to cling to the labels. We had a teen last year in a group chat ask one of the Yerucham teens what the traditional dress is in Yerucham, and they were like, jeans and a t-shirt. And I think it comes from that, we talk about it, it's picturesque, it's very cute, it's so different from us that it almost becomes a novelty, and it's a totally real place. And we're very excited to watch the growth and the continued growth in Yerucham. I just had a call with my counterpart today, who said people all over Israel are flocking to the mayor of Yerucham, Tal Ohana, because the leadership she's given to the community has gotten Yerucham and kept Yerucham a coronavirus safe zone in Israel. It's one of the only communities that's really doing a good job of keeping each other safe and of control through regulation. And her leadership is now kind of on the stage in Israel, which is really, really amazing to watch and to hear. So our time with Yerucham teens in Miami is really, really fun. It's amazing to me how many of our Jewish leaders in Miami speak fluent Hebrew. So I spend a week with those teens. The Miami teens are generally in school. So when the Yerucham teens come to visit Miami, we all spend a Shabbat together overnight. But during the week, I with the Yerucham staff, travel around Miami. We get to see what Miami is like, what being in Jewish outside of Israel is like, and what being Jewish inside of Miami is like. And we travel north to Aventura, and we come down south to Beth. We visit the University of Miami, and the Yerucham teens have the opportunity to see what the immediate future looks like for most of our teens, because most of them finish high school and head to the Army. And what being Jewish means in a place where you go to the grocery store and you have to look at the labels on the food if you keep kosher, because when you go to a shufer in Israel, everything on the shelf is kosher, and there's a big mindfulness to that. So we give them that experience in doing activities like a scavenger hunt with the JCS Kosher Food Bank inside of a grocery store. And things like that are really awesome ways to really process what our Jewish life is like here, and how many flavors of that we can give. I'm trying to now think of something outrageous that happened, and I'm very proud to say that I did my job well, that nothing really outrageous happened.
Hi.
But
You went to Israel and you came back with the same number of teens?
all the teens were accounted for, and all of their limbs were accounted for.
All their body parts, good.
Which, for those of you that are parents, being 24 the last time we were in Israel, and being the responsible adult for 22 minors, because I also had junior staff with me, it's a feat. 16 and 17-year-olds and 2 18-year-olds that are you're the person that they come to when there's a problem. It's a lot of responsibility, but I think our age closeness helped a lot. The fact that the teens are amazing helped a lot. One thing we did on the ground in Miami that we loved was we took all of the teens to like a trampoline park in Aventura. And what was really cool about that was you can take away any difficulty of a language barrier. You can take away differences in Jewish practice. You can take away political differences. And it was just like a couple of hours of watching kids being kids with each other. And that was really amazing that like we got to go into a building and all of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about that are really important to talk about, we could put them aside and be friends. They're all friends, even when we're having difficult conversations, but it was just joyful and about building relationships and fondness. There was a very competitive dodgeball game going on. That was really heartwarming that we spent so much time talking about the differences and in that highlighting our similarities, but we could put all of that aside and just be people in a room together. And that was really amazing on the ground here. And then we go to Israel for 3 weeks, in a typical year. And the middle week, Diller calls it Community Week, and every international community, which is a non-Israeli community, spends the week in their partnership city in Israel. And the teens plan that. So there's a Monday committee that's like 4 Miami teens and 4 Yerushalayim teens, and they plan the days and they call the places and book the bus, and they get to plan and facilitate those days. And that is amazing. I've done it 3 times now. And Yerushalayim is very small, and I've never had a cloned experience, which is a feat in itself. And I think that's a testament to the creativity of the teens and what they bring every year. The experiences in Israel are usually a little bit more wild, but mostly because you're like running on jet fuel and everybody's tired and gets very comfortable. And I'm trying to think the most outrageous experience we had in Israel. This is so silly. We were in the water tunnels under Jerusalem. And my last group that I got to go to Israel with, which was not this past summer, but the one before, was very musically inclined. They really had a lot of energy. They brought a lot of party. And I happened to be standing in the middle of the group. I had other staff at the back and other staff at the front. And the first 10 teens in our line were singing a Journey song. And the back 10 teens were singing another song. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have the worst headache. Like, it's so cute. They're having so much fun, but like, I can't do the 2 songs converging. And all of a sudden, and I don't know if they were texting, is there even service in these tunnels inside of this mountain? I don't know. I was too scared to have my phone out. I was like, what if I drop this in the water? Oh my God. And all of a sudden it goes completely quiet and they all start screaming my name, chanting Lindsay. And I was like laughing. I was mortified. I was so embarrassed. And they stopped and we heard a field trip of little yeshiva boys, like maybe 3rd grade, keep the chant going behind us. And that, to me, I'm so glad to say, I'm very proud to say that was the most outrageous thing that happened to me. But that was the most wild experience I've ever had. And it's one of like the 6 times my mother's rolling her eyes. I can feel it, even though I can't see her, that I knew I was like, this is my place. I'm just going to stay here. It's much easier. Everybody's happier. And that's happened a few times, but like to know that it doesn't matter what the word you're saying is, that everybody's feeling the same energy and that it's good vibes, and that they're really just excited to be there and there's a different thing, was really, really fun.
Awesome, Lindsay. So yeah, I think you've really found a great place for you at Diller, and I know you do other things like the network, part of the Federation of Philanthropy for the young adults, and you're also involved in the sorority I'm going to mess it up. AFI.
Yep.
AFI. And so, some people say, not me, and Andrea can attest to this, our producer. Some people say that millennials are really just involved in what's happening in their lives, but really you are involved everywhere, and you are really making a stand for the next generation. And I tend to think of the next generation is you, but you're even going past that. The next generation are people after you. So I want to thank you for joining us today on Erev Tov and sharing what you do. And again, a shout out for youth, for 10th and 11th graders who want to be a part of Diller teens and really have an impactful experience with this woman who has such incredible energy and knowledge and joy and passion for leading the next generation. I mean, what more does somebody want in having kids impacted? So that is awesome. So thank you so much. We thank everybody for joining us. You know, there is a holiday upon us. Tonight, of course, Cantor Nelson's going to be on the Jewish Voice. And tomorrow night, we'll be celebrating Simchat Torah and celebrating our first graders who will be consecrated. So that's a little younger than the teens that you work with, just a little, but that's how we start them. We get them excited. We are going to be a remote service, but not less of a celebration. So as we know, Lindsay, we can celebrate remotely as we weave in videos of them and songs of them. And so this has been a great Erev Tov. I suggest everybody smash up some soft pears and put them in with some vodka. Never a bad idea. And or some soda water, also never a bad idea. And I hope everybody has an Erev Tov and gets to meet somebody like Lindsay and helps them change our Jewish world. So have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much. Erev Tov.